Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
And away we go. Does that bring back memories?
Have you heard about a snowstorm?
Listen, I'm wow. Hoping you all keeping warm this weekend. You can warm up beside the fireplace with B.J. Edwards and Mr. Anderson here at Last Call. Got a great program for you this morning. Great program.
Can't help thinking about those Western North Carolina people.
I mean, there's somebody's probably going to die this weekend, Mr. Anderson. They just haven't been able to get to them.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate. That's hard to.
There you go to redneckhousingrelief.com and send some donations. They need propane,
among other things. Yeah,
among other things, like common sense.
A political sunrise in
not
Ohio.
Their common sense.
Yep.
The people that are able to help common sense.
Amen. Kim Georgeton is going to be joining us in about 10-15 minutes. And then David Arthur, good friend of ours, I Belong Amen Ministries, the second hour. A lot going on. Thank you, Don. Thank you. I just got a message from Don. Evidently, the Department of Health, this is an update from the Department of Health. Evidently, there's a new disorder that's called political anxiety disorder, PAD. It's characterized by sentiments of fear and anxiety in political situations, causing considerable distress and impairing ability to function, especially when it comes to thinking rationally. These fears can be triggered by perceived or actual scrutiny from others. Individuals with political anxiety disorder fear negative evaluations from other people and are prone to experience severe incidences of fact phobia. That's from our chief reporter, Don Doe, Mr. Anderson. We got him in the journalist portal.
Cool.
Yeah, neat. So there you go. Political anxiety disorder. It has spread throughout the country.
I believe that.
And I don't think ivermectin is going to cure it. I just don't. Hey, you're about to listen to 2 hours of opinion and entertainment supplied by Last Call Radio, where you can see the difference. We're not doctors, lawyers, politicians, professional journalists, nor do either of us hold a doctorate degree in anything. Not that would make any difference. Our opinion, of course. We only ask that you as an individual and or corporately not take our statements or those that we voice from others personal, nor do we recommend that you act on them as if they are facts, although they might very well be just that, facts. Again, our opinion. You're not required to listen to, act on, or repeat anything you hear today, and that any information and opinion we present is meant for the good of the order, and again, by no means intended to harm or threaten anyone. I'm going to bring up Kim in about 10 minutes.
Really I might add that we might have a bit of relief from that political anxiety you might be feeling.
Really?
Yeah, we might. Just because, we're here and we love the Lord and we know who has the answer.
Well, yeah, there is that. There is that. Yesterday, March for Life, Washington, D.C. I think J.D. Vance was there. And then from the headlines, wow. Texas Democrats, inclusive Christianity is nothing like the Christianity found in the Bible. Even up here in Ohio, and I'm going to mention the gentleman's name, but there is a Texas Democrat posing as a Christian who the Democratic Party is really excited about. I think he's running for Congress or Senate. And it's got all the way up here in Ohio, all the positives about him and how much a Christian he is, until you hear him talk and you watch what he does. Urgent action to stop Islam and ban Sharia. The number of mosques, Islamic schools, and centers has doubled in our nation in the past 15 years, according to studies by Pew and ISBN. Several states are facing a vote to outright ban Sharia, a system that cannot exist within our Constitution. And by the way, it is not a religion, folks. Okay? It is not a religion. Some states are battling legislation that protects Islam and Sharia as a religious freedom and therefore makes it immune to scrutiny or illegal to speak out against it. Some communities are fighting the building of the entire Sharia communities, public call to Islamic power over cities or large Islamic complexes like cities in their own backyard. So help me law. New Jersey governor sworn in on Constitution and not the Bible. Probably not going to pay attention to either. The Washington State School District is being sued for requiring students to hide their Bibles. Who's under attack here in America, folks? Tell me, who's under attack? Could it be possibly Christians? I know.
Yeah, not just in America.
Yeah. ICE is under attack. ICE is under attack. Democrat Attorney General talks about shooting ICE agents in Stand Your Ground in Arizona. Chris Mays has basically put a legal seminar for how to retroactively justify killing ICE agents. Republican lawmakers, the Arizona Police Association, and the Trump administration castigated her over suggestion that it may be reasonable to shoot masked U.S. immigration and custom enforcement agents. We've come a long way, baby. And that political anxiety disorder, that PAD, you can see it in action in Minnesota. Anti-ICE protesters storm Minnesota church. There's that church again, because they believe that's a Christian church. They believe one of the pastors works for ICE. Oh my goodness. Don Lemon may go to jail for ridiculous stunt protesting ICE in Minnesota. Ilhar Rahman is under federal investigation for making millions of dollars while in Congress. Bill and Hillary Clinton. Ilhan Omar. Others. They're not going to jail, folks.
They can't even get them to the hearings.
Right. They're not going to jail. And that's because we're an amoral society.
If it was us, they would be at our door and arrest us right now.
Yep. They have your address, Christian. So watch what you're doing. If they don't get the peasants to shoot you, they're going to throw you in jail. What are you talking about? I don't know. Let's talk about J6. What happened there? We had an insurrection. We had thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that showed up in Washington, D.C. with Bibles on their knees praying and singing with flags and cell phones. Going to overthrow the government. And the only ones that died in the fray were those that showed up to pray. America, take a good look at yourself. You know, we're gonna have on a program this morning, the first hour, a young lady that's running for lieutenant governor of the state of Ohio. And the gentleman she's running with, Casey Putsch, he's a good man. I've met him, like where he's coming from. But Casey and Kim, our guest. Kim is our guest. saw the need. A lot of us see the need out there, and the first thing we do is what? Yeah, that's right, complain. Yeah. We complain how they do it or what they're doing. And then sit back on our couch and at their favorite adult beverage, kick back and let the world go by. Until they get that knock at the door. Then things will change, but then it'll be too late. We can still be a nation under God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But we're going to have to be smart. Not just about electing officials, but what you're doing with your children. Throwing in government-run schools to teach them that life has no meaning, morals are relative, man, not God, is the measure of all things, the state's your daddy. And then, as a child, you're a victim. And these are the bad guys. God help you if you're a Christian, because they're coming after you. You're carrying the truth, and they can't handle the truth. Yeah. I don't think we still have that, but you can't handle the truth. So much truth to that. All right, we got that. Virginia, oh boy, yeah. Virginia introduces bill that prevents government from asking nonprofits to provide proof of eligibility for federal funds. It's probably discriminatory. You know, like they want to know if you're a citizen when you vote and you have to show papers. You have to show your papers. Good Lord. Vance reveals the White House confirmed only 12% of foreign aid goes to people who need it. Voters reveal new bruise on Trump's hand at Davos meeting. AI begun asking itself questions in order to learn more quickly. That's from the Babylon Bee. That's where I got Don from, by the way. We recruited him from the Babylon Bee. Should Cuba, China, Greenland, and Venezuela all be owned by the United States? U.S. officially exit World Health Organization. Who? But I'm really not looking forward to the November elections. National. Whoa. I think we're going to spend 2027, 2028 impeaching Donald Trump if somebody doesn't kill him first. We have to stop this. Folks, this isn't who we are as America. This is not who we are. We are better than this. You hear that from the other side all the time, don't you? Well, how about us starting to use that? I'm talking to a group of folks on Nextdoor, which is an application, liberal application, if you will. And all they want to do is badmouth Donald Trump. And what I'm entering into the fray, and I'm getting traction on this, is as goes the family, so goes the nation. And I did a survey. What do you think is the most important institution for any nation? The family, right? And then other options. But I'm starting a discussion. And it came up, well, what is a family? Okay, I answered the question. Well, I'm the exception to the rule. My husband did this, my husband did that, and I have 3 children, and they're married, and they're happy, yada, yada, yada. Folks, a child needs their biological mother and father. Now, that's not going to happen in all cases. Stuff happens. But they need them. And the problem in this nation is the foundation, which is the family, and it is broken. And we have to fix that. And we need help in fixing it. We're going to bring somebody on in about a minute after our break who's going to help us fix it here in Ohio. And maybe Ohio, the heart of it all, will spread. Huh? What do you think to the rest of the nation? B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Folks, this is your last call. Stay tuned for Kim Georgeton.
That new this this midday. City of Austin declared today Care Austin Day. This morning's proclamation honors the group's civic engagement and advocacy work at City Hall ahead of today's City Council meeting. Now, CARE stands for Council on American Islamic Relations.
Our proclamation today, declaring January 22nd as Care Austin Day, means a lot, not only to Care Austin staff and board members, but for the whole Muslim community in our city and statewide.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
And we are back. What an uplifting message this morning, right? Folks, these are opportunities. These are opportunities. I don't think we're that far gone. Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
It's just open your eyes, wake up, and enjoy your day. Have another cup of coffee.
Betty, did you want in? You're unmuted. Okay. I'm going to bring our guest on, Kim Georgeton. And Kim is running for the office of Lieutenant Governor for the state of Ohio. The gubernatorial candidate she's running with is Casey Putsch. And they're challenging the establishment picks in the May primary. And I've talked to them both. I've seen what they're trying to do, and I like where they're coming from. It's refreshing, and I think they're viable. I know they're viable choices for especially the Ohio Christian conservative community, and actually for the rest of the community, if you think about it. Kim, welcome to Last Call.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. I did not have a bio on you. So could you give us a brief breakdown? I'm Kim by trade. I'm an executive recruiter, a headhunter, if you will. So I always like to take a look at somebody's resume and see what jobs they've held, what their goals are. So build that resume for our listeners this morning, if you would, Kim.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm from the Cincinnati, Ohio area. I was born the youngest of 7. And my father was a World War II Marine vet. He was in the 2nd Marine Division. He fought in Nagasaki, Okinawa, and Saipan. And so we are a family, with a broad range of folks and siblings. And from there, I've had about a 30-year career in the software consulting space. So working from companies early days, I worked at Amazon.com back in 1998 when they were just a startup. And then I've worked at 3 other startups and started up a couple of my own companies. I've also worked on the retail side as well as the consulting side, and have been through multiple acquisitions throughout my career, because software consulting was one of those industries that started early on with acquisitions and aggregating to larger and larger companies, and eventually outsourcing a lot of those jobs along the way. And as recently as April of 2024, I was a victim of the layoffs from an H-1B program. So an Indian company came in and bought the company I worked for, and slowly but surely they replaced every single worker on that staff with either an Indian on American soil or an offshore person in India, actually, to reduce their costs. So experiencing that myself, actually, that's an issue that's really important to Casey and I, and especially as this, affects and impacts all of Ohioans, especially our young people who are graduating with their computer science degrees and other STEM degrees as well. So that's just kind of a brief background of where I grew up and my career. I live with my husband. We have a daughter who attends a Christian college right now, so we're empty nesters, and spent a lot of quality time with our daughter as she grew, and that was really important for us. When you talk about the importance of the family, we know what that's about, because that took priority for us, as she was experiencing all of her ages and stages. And so from there, my entry or foray into politics, I call myself an accidental activist, because in 2020, when
I get that, Kim. I get that. This is something I didn't volunteer for. Okay.
Right.
So it just hit me up the side of the head. And I'm going, nope, sorry, I'm not interested. And then it hit me again. I'm going, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. And the third time I'm going, okay, I'm interested. So go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah. So what happened when COVID hit in 2020, and my daughter was in 9th grade at that time. And, I already was involved with a group of ladies, a group of friends who we were keeping a very close eye on DEI and what was happening in the schools. And my daughter attended a Christian high school. And we uncovered some strange DEI things that were happening even in her Christian school. And things like, for example, they were getting ready to read To Kill a Mockingbird in 8th grade. And the teacher gave them a quiz before they read the story. And the quiz had questions on it like, consider, would you ever date somebody of a different skin color than you? Rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how prejudiced you think your parents are and explain why. Things like this that were basically triggering for me, that they were, trying to impose a certain belief into my daughter. And so we, as all the parents, were already like standing up and, demanding that we see, that this quiz stops and that, there's nothing that's happening regarding that. And then of course we did a lot of research on the different programs that were happening and some of the DEI that was happening in school at that time. So then COVID hits, and of course, I didn't want my daughter to be wearing a mask at school. I did not like the idea that later came with regard to forced vaccination. So I quickly jumped on board with a bill that we had being proposed in Ohio called HB 248. And I became very active in protesting against everything that was going on. And I saw very quickly that our government in Ohio was not protecting the rights of individuals. I used to carry around my Constitution, and I actually had a laminated notice whenever I would visit companies that were trying to have us put masks on. And I would read them a legal notice about how they were actually violating my rights and that I could potentially put them under a citizen's arrest for trying to force me to wear a mask. And I did that in many different kinds of stores, whether it was grocery store or clothing store. And I would just have, a very calm conversation, kind of walking them through this legal notice. And, and then I would flip it on the back. And so anyway, that's kind of how I started getting involved in the political scene. Did you have a question? Yeah.
You had choices. You could have submitted and gone, say, well, okay, I'm going to trust the educational system. There's something positive here. Maybe what I'm seeing is, just I'm being imaginary. This really isn't what's happening. And other folks around you are probably thinking the same thing and saying the same thing. One of the problems, I've been an activist for 38 years. And one of the problems that has always been there is that it, but the people around you, and that could include, or especially family members, won't agree with you. And you're going to upset some people, and you're going to stress the family. And you had a choice to, okay, I'm going to please the rest of the world and expose my daughter and just let things go, or I'm going to step in and do something. You saw a need, okay? You saw a need, but you stepped in to that and you got active in it. You mentioned House Bill 248. Where did we go from there? It doesn't stop there, does it? Because once you open the door, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't realize all this was happening. Maybe I better just hide under the bed or in the closet and just pray to God to take care of it and let it go. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, it was kind of a wake up call. I had not been involved in politics at all. And, I didn't even know how our people locally got elected. I didn't know there were precinct executives. I didn't know there were ward chairs. I didn't know, what that whole process was about. And so I really had to learn. I was starting from scratch. And I said, how did we get here? And I just looked around and I said, okay, I have a state representative. I have no idea who this person is. Mm-hmm. So I did some research and I was like, okay, I found out that she was, of course, a Democrat. And I had found out that a Republican ran against her in her election in 2020, and he lost. And then, of course, I'm very analytical because I have a consulting background. So I started to look at the numbers of the votes that came in for him versus her. And I started to understand, the little intricacies of running an election and a campaign. And I just thought, in this particular area that I lived in, it was a leaning Democrat area. And I, after talking to some political advisors, I learned that women sometimes have an advantage in those Democrat leaning areas, just simply because the Democrats, for some reason, have some thought that a woman could be a better person in that position. And then when they go to the ballot box, they just check mark that person. And so I met with this gentleman who ran against her, and I said, I think that I could be a viable candidate here. Like, I'd like to run in this race. And when they were just, you don't have any experience. Like, we don't recommend you do that. You should start with something like getting a precinct executive first. And I was like, I don't think you understand. Like, I don't like what's going on here. And I don't see anybody doing anything about it. And I said, so, I appreciate your feedback, but I'm going to run anyway. And I took it upon myself to learn how to do the petitions and, all of that. So I got into that race, and boy, that man got into the race against me after I had already filed, and he had said he wasn't going to do it. And what I quickly found out was the entire Republican Party came out and they endorsed him in the primary, just like they're doing in this primary in Ohio right now. They got the whole party behind him, tried to do everything they could to destroy me. They actually visited my husband at his work, and they asked him if I would step down. I received multiple phone calls bullying me to stop running. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't know who you are. I don't know why you're threatening me. The civic process is supposed to be for civic people to get involved, and you're completely having the opposite reaction here. So anyway, I learned very quickly that, the government by the people and for the people is actually not, and that the people who are in power will do everything they can to maintain their power.
Yeah. The goal of a politician is, number one, to get elected, and number two, more importantly, is to stay elected. And you're going to run into that. You're a stranger.
Yes.
First of all, you don't. They look you over and they go, whoa, hold on a second. She doesn't have any handles. We need to install some handles on her before we can let her run. So get it right, young lady. Get it right. Go ahead.
So anyway, through the course of that, I even with everyone coming out against me, I knocked on so many doors, and I got still 40%, a little over 40% of the vote. And I do believe there was some actual cheating going on in my election as well, because I followed up on every single absentee ballot that was ordered. I had a whole team of grassroots people behind me, and we were literally going to everybody's home that ordered an absentee ballot, and we found that some people were no longer alive. We found that some of these homes where absentee ballots were being ordered, there were multiple ballots ordered from people with different last names. And when you would go to the home, you would find that it kind of looked like a safe house, like where people are put after they are, doing a criminal activity. So it was very obvious to me that, this whole system is really broken. So
Amen.
that was the experience there. Of course, I ended up I almost sued my daughter's school because they continued to try to make her wear a mask. I did, surveys, and I got a whole bunch of parents against it. Still, the school was very adamant about saying that if they needed to require people to wear masks, that they were going to still continue to do that. So I pulled her out of school. We continued her high school homeschooling. And that was just a really, really eye-opening experience there as well. The fact that these schools will actually follow policies that are going against law. There's a difference between law and a policy. And we saw a bunch of COVID policies, which were not laws. And we saw a bunch of people's rights be trampled over with what's considered policy. So I also at that time organized a protest at our local health department because there was a young lady in our area who was vaccine injured. She took part in the vaccine trial at our children's hospital, and she immediately had POTS and all of these. She was in a wheelchair. She couldn't walk. her spine and, everything in her nervous system was breaking down. And so she had to have a feeding tube and all of that. And so this young lady, I took a picture of her and I brought it to the health department meeting, and I held it up in the meeting and I said, this is what you're responsible for this, and stop saying that this vaccine is safe and effective, because I had all of this research saying that it was not safe and effective. And the fact that they were marketing it this way on social media was very upsetting to me. So I did all of that. I organized that protest at the health department. About 45 people showed up, which was a pleasant surprise, because at that time, people were still very much scared and still very much unaware of what was going on with the vaccine. And many people, even lots of conservative people I would consider my friends, were still getting the vaccine because they wanted to travel, or they wanted to do this or that, or they were feeling pressure from their job. And, and I just said, this is wrong. And if you can't see this, there's something very dubious about this. And so anyway, that kind of just, in a nutshell, wraps up how I got involved in politics. And that initial run was very eye-opening. And then in 2022, I ran for, or 2024, I actually ran in a primary for a congressional race, because I wanted to understand what was the difference between something at a state level versus something at a federal level. And I found out it was kind of just as bad. If you don't have $1 million for a congressional race, you're not going to win. So my goal there was to kind of understand, how much money does a person have to actually spend to be able to get, enough votes to win in a primary here. And I was proud to say that I had the most votes for the least amount spent, that ratio, if you compute that ratio. And I said, okay, well, I actually am making a difference here, and I'm learning, and I can actually apply this then, to future races and future people who we want to see get elected. So that's kind of the story of my background and how I got pulled into this crazy mess. But I'm glad I did, and I think that my goal is to help motivate more people to get involved, because that's really the only way we're going to be able to take it back.
Last call radio. We're going to take a break. Lighting a candle. Talking to Kim Georgeton, candidate for Lieutenant Governor, state of Ohio. She got whacked by society like everybody else does, and went, whoa, hold on a second. Let's look at this a little further and actually engage the culture. There's a lot of advantages there. Let's take the break, and we'll get back into our conversation with Kim Georgeton.
Now, therefore, I, Kirk Watson, Mayor of the City of Austin, Texas, do hereby proclaim January 2026 as the inaugural Muslim Heritage Month in Austin, Texas.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
And we are back talking with Kim Georgeton. Kim, we have a panel here, and from time to time they may want to ask you some questions about what's going on. And I'll start that off with, okay, we've got some experience under our belt. How did you happen to run into Casey?
Well, I, on New Year's Day, so this is what is the day today even? January 24th.
24th, right.
New Year's Day, I got a call from the Casey campaign, and I had seen that Casey was running for governor, and, I didn't know him. I did watch some of his videos on YouTube, so I kind of knew what he was about. And as a Warren County Central Committee member, I had actually reached out to his campaign sometime in early December, just letting them know that we were doing endorsements and to submit his information, to be considered as an endorsement. Because of my experience, what happened in the primary I ran in, I want to make sure everybody has an equal opportunity to be endorsed. So that was kind of one of my goals with reaching out to the different candidates who were trying to challenge some of these primary people. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so I get the call on New Year's Day from their campaign. Again, I had really never had any contact with anybody over there. And they asked me if I would consider being the lieutenant governor. So it's funny because I had talked to my husband, earlier on in the month of December, and I had made a decision that I wasn't going to run for anything in this election cycle.
I love it. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing here. Somebody asked me, you've got a great voice for radio. It was radio at the time. And have you ever thought about doing a radio? No, absolutely not. I want no part of that. Okay. 3 times I got that message. And then boom, guy offers me this. And I go, all right. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, so I had just sent like an email to our Republican GOP, and I said, I'm not going to run for anything. I'm just going to work on local things this year, and we have an initiative in Ohio to stop property taxes. And I had reached out to the person running. They call it Axe the Tax. And so I reached out to the head of that program, and I said, I want to offer to help on this program. I think it's a good thing. We need to stop property taxes, and I can help distribute petitions or, help get signatures or whatever. So I just reached out to him. Anyway, I get this call on New Year's Day. It's at 8:30 p.m. at night, New Year's Day. And they say, the campaign team says, Casey has to file this paperwork and he needs to define his lieutenant governor before he can file. And, we would love for you to consider. And, so anyway, conversations continued. I had a couple-hour conversation with Casey. I talked to my husband about it. And after he reviewed Casey's YouTube channel and talked and overheard our conversation for 2 hours, he was like, yeah, I mean, he's going to be facing a lot of the same things you faced, and I think you need to help him. And so, of course, I said yes. And obviously now I'm here. So that's what we're doing.
Good. I think I have Betty's unmuted. I'm going to bring Betty in. And I think James Bond is here as well. Betty, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're going after the property taxes.
I'm sorry, I can't hear Betty, but I see her talking.
You can't hear?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
I'll go out and come back in.
Okay. James, are you there? James is tough to track down. He's all right. I'll take James out of there. Something that I want to get into the meat of the matter here.
I cannot hear.
Wow. I don't know what's going on. You can't hear me at all? Hello? Any suggestions? Anybody else? I love live radio.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I think we've lost our guest. She's probably going to try to come back in. We had technical difficulties.
I'll just go in the back for a bit and get her on.
All righty. One of the things that I want to make sure I want to mention is that there is. Do I think that all the votes are being counted properly? No. I think that just through human error and things like that, stuff happens. But there's a lot, and Kim, and anybody that goes against the establishment. You still can't hear me? I don't know what the problem is this morning. Kim, can you I'm still can't hear me, I assume. Yeah. One of the problems you have is the jury tampering that goes on with the press. It's one-sided, folks. When you're talking to people, all they're doing is repeating what they hear from the press. Local, state, federal, it's all the same thing. Donald Trump bad. Okay, Christians bad. We're a democracy and we're not. And if the majority of people want it, then we should do it. I don't know. Kim, can you hear us yet?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I don't know. I'm going to take a chance on bringing Betty back on. See if Betty can destroy this again. Go ahead, Betty.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
Yay! Let's quit.
Well, I'm so glad that you're going against the property taxes, because just like us, we built this house in 95 and we've already paid what we paid for a house, $65,000. We've already paid more than that over 30 years.
Exactly, yeah.
you know, and it's sad, and we have potholes. And I don't know if you're familiar with Zanesville, the bridge there. They've been working on that thing for like 10 years or more. So I had run into the lady that was the treasurer or whatever with the property taxes, and she was saying, well, you got to pay them, because I was telling her, we need to get rid of those. Oh, no, we can't. I said, oh, yeah, we do. She said, well, what about our children at school? I said, what about them? You want to mutilate them? We have kitty litters at the school. Why would I support something like that? And I don't even have a child in school for the last 20 years. Why? Because that's where most of my taxes are going, for the corruption of the schools, you know? And then she said, well, what about the roads? I said, yeah, what about them? We got potholes in front of our house. How about Zanesville? When are they going to fix that bridge? And she turned around and walked away, you know? The thing is, are we going to able to get that on the ballot? Because I was a rover last time we had voting in May or whenever it was, and people were actually coming in for those property taxes. You know, they were actually coming out to vote because of that. Do you think they're going to be able to get that on a ballot this year? The property taxes?
Well, I hope so. I know that there are a lot of volunteers who are getting the signatures required. And I know that I think Brian Massey, the head of that program, the head of that initiative, he's not publishing the total number of signatures because he doesn't want anyone to know where they are with the amount of signatures. But I sure hope they get on the ballot. I mean, both Casey and I signed the petition, so
Yeah,
we both support it.
Yeah, we did. As a matter of fact, I had a girl that was doing it, and I had like 25 people come to my house, you know, so just meet me at my house, strangers that I didn't even know, you know,
Yeah.
because we need to do something. We pay taxes with everything. I mean, they get it with the food, the gas, everything. You know, I go to the vet, they tax, you know, everything. So, you know, we need to get rid of that because it's wrong. It's unconstitutional. Thank you for what you do. God bless you. We're standing behind you.
Thank you.
The more money you put into something, the more you're going to get of it. So the more money you put into government, the more you're going to get of it. Okay. And that's the point. I like the property tax movement, but like in the city I live in the area, the schools didn't try to, they got nailed. They didn't get the property tax last time they tried it. So they went with an income tax. And how they got that passed is there's a lot of retirees in the area, and they're saying, hey, you're not going to have to pay any more property taxes if you just have other people pay out of their own income, and then you'll be okay. And they got it passed.
Wow.
It's not, and that's what they'll do. Listen, it is not how we're getting the money. It's what we're doing with it, DEI, etc.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
We
Absolutely.
need to stop the flow. We need to stop the flow of monies. Again, I'm all for the property tax thing. I understand how much more we're paying to live in the place that we supposedly own, but the government can kick us out anytime. Listen, I believe in Kim and I believe in Casey because they don't want to empower themselves. They want to empower us. And that is not the typical politician. Typical politicians wants to, again, get elected, stay elected. And to do that, money's the power to make decisions, folks. They use that to fuel their fires, their campaign fires, if you will. I'm rattling. I apologize, Kim. I'm supposed to be interviewing you.
No, I'm fine.
Comments. What real quickly, and we're gonna have to go here shortly. Real quickly, what does Ohio need, and what skill set do you bring that's going to help us get to that ultimate end?
Well, I think when we talk about, yes, that Ohio is collecting a lot of money, but we don't really, no one has confidence, or I certainly don't have confidence on how the money is being used and where it's going. And we can see that very easily with the Somalian fraud that's going on, with the daycare fraud.
Mm-hmm.
We have these little pocket communities in Springfield, Ohio, in Reading, Ohio, obviously in Columbus. I think there's one up in Cleveland area. These are these pocket communities where illegal immigrants have like gathered, and they're receiving welfare. They're receiving food stamps. They're receiving Medicare, Medicaid services. All of this is for free at our taxpayer dollars. How did they get here? Why did they get here? They get free cell phones, all of that. That's all of our money. And if you look at since 2011 in Ohio, we had a $50 billion budget. And today it's $100 billion. Okay. So that's a 100% increase in, a little over, 12 years or 13 years. And I don't think people's salaries have increased 100% in that same time frame. In fact, I think a lot of people have lost income, lost wages over that time period, because what we've seen with the forcing H-1B visas are pushing salaries down for Ohioans. So we want to get in and use my consulting background to get in and literally, we had Doge. We haven't yet seen any impacts of Doge in our American pockets yet. And it seems like our federal government is actually replacing every cent that they thought that they uncovered. They're replacing it in new spending.
Yep.
So, so we're not going to do that in Ohio. We're going to audit, and we're going to find the areas and the gaps where the money is disappearing. And we're going to fill those gaps and prevent those gaps from happening again in the future. So I believe that when we are able to get rid of property taxes, I do believe that there's going to be enough money that we can find that is currently being lost or given to different initiatives that, we shouldn't be giving it to, and that we can then replace those property taxes at the state level within the state budget. Because if in 1997, the Supreme Court actually ruled it was unconstitutional to get school funding from property taxes. So we're actually operating against the Constitution currently. So it is the responsibility of the state legislature to come up with the plan for schools. And I can just tell you, being involved in my daughter's school and also running a chapter of Moms for Liberty, I created my own group called Free Our Children. With all of the efforts in looking at what's going on in public schools, it's quite a disaster. And it's not the fault of the teachers. We've seen, if you look at a simple graph online, you see the complete increase in spending of administrative staff in the public schools, and you see a tailing off of the success of our students. So there's only 33% of students that are actually reading at the appropriate grade level in public schools right now. And that's a national statistic, but I believe it applies to Ohio as well. And what we need to do is go back to from whence we came. We need to teach cursive. We need to teach shop. We need to teach home economics. We need to teach critical thinking, more of the classical studies. We need to go back to pencil and paper. And have kids actually writing, manipulating things with their hands, because they're actually losing cognitive function by not making those connections with their hand and their brain in terms of writing. They're trying to right now roll out iPads for kindergartners.
Yes.
This is absolutely ridiculous. We've got, my daughter had to have a Google Suite for all of her things. And now a lot of the kids in college are using AI to write their papers. So cognitive function is declining, yet we keep giving more money to public schools. That makes no sense. So, I'm trying to get back to what your original question was, but what do we need?
I got a couple of folks that may want to make a comment or two, so I'll let them in. JC,
yeah, absolutely. Feel free.
JR, just a couple quick things. I mean, I like what I'm hearing, but I'm going to tell you one thing, that the teachers in the school are the problem. And I say that because I ran for school board against two women that were 20 years and 12 years tied to the schools. First lady, Dr. Marjorie Bennett, got 3,900 votes. The next lady got 3,400 votes, and I come in at 3,200. The people in our communities don't come out. Yeah. Like Pastor Bill said, JC, if the church would have just voted for you, you'd have been a landslide. Then it ran for county commissioner. Out of 60,000 people in the county, only 6,000 people voted. The Republican Party didn't back me. Mm-hmm. They backed the guy that was a township trustee, and he used to be a pastor. So he gets 2,400 votes, and those other three guys that were in the race each got 1,000. That's 6,000 votes out of 60,000 people. But yet they all want to whine and complain about stuff, but they don't want to do anything. So I know you got a tough job against you. And then we helped Pastor Neil Peterson out of Dayton run for governor.
Yeah.
We got 1,000 signatures for him here in Knox County. We were the head group of signatures. We were with him for a year on that. I see all the corruption and the lying and the backstabbing that goes on. So I'm at the same point where I'm not running for nothing again. I'm done. I'm just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then people ask, why don't you do something again? I'm like, I'm just kind of waiting. But here's kind of where I'm heading. What will you be doing? I know money's a big issue. Money is corrupt. That's what all these conversations about. But what are we going to do about the paganism and the Muslims in our schools indoctrinating these kids? These rainbow flags and all the stuff with pagan religions is horrible.
Yeah.
But teachers in there, the good Christian teachers I know, they won't say nothing. They're scared to death. Superintendent of a school, principal of a school here at one of our board meetings, when we had the little second grader in a dress at the school, we were ripping him at the school board meetings. He come to me afterwards, and I coached him in high school baseball, and now he's a principal. He said, JC, I agree with you, but I just can't do anything. I'm like, oh my goodness. You know what I mean? Because they're afraid of losing their job. But
Yeah.
so what are you going to do with some of that stuff like that?
I think, there is a way to prohibit activism in schools. Like, that's not a place for activism in schools. Like, there's one flag that belongs in the school. Well, maybe two, the US flag, and then the state flag. Those are the only two flags that belong in a school. So we can definitely do immediate resolutions around those kinds of things. And you're right, there is a problem with certain people who are brainwashed into believing that they have to do this activism, and they are trying to roll it out to students, and it's wrong, and it has to be stopped. And there needs to be some discipline for those teachers who try to do that. So there needs to be a reporting mechanism back to the superintendent, and then it just comes back down to accountability, and making sure that we have a process in place where people can, report this type of activism, and then something needs to be done about it immediately. So, this works when you have parents that are involved. And so that's the other issue that we see. There's a lot of apathy. And this gets back to, I think when you opened the show, you were talking about how, religion is really the core thing that drives any community. So you've got religion at the top, and then out of religion comes culture. And then out of culture comes the laws, and out of laws then comes how we, can hold people accountable below that in the main population. And we have seen a breakdown of religion over the course of the past 30 years. They took prayer out of schools in the 70s. Now they put a prayer back into the law, but it's not the same. It's more of like a meditation time. So there's something wrong with how our society has lost its way with understanding, I think Sam Adams said, only a moral people can continue to support a constitutional republic. And we're in this phase right now where a lot of our society has just been purely brainwashed into believing they'd rather have Marxism than a constitutional republic. And so we have to correct that. And I'm seeing right now, one thing that gives me hope is this young generation Z, they went through, they were in 9th grade when my daughter was, the same kind of story, and they are coming out with fire in them. And I love to see it because, they will be the generation that steps up and gets civically involved. And we've got a lot of these great young people who are volunteering on our campaign. And it's just really awesome to see. I've never seen anything like it before, in terms of young people wanting to step up and get involved. So I'm hoping we can turn it around. Yeah.
They are amazing. I think Norm has a comment, and I'm going to make a quick comment before that. The Supreme Court legalized contraception in 1965, pornography in 1969, abortion in 1973, and homosexual in 2003, and homosexual marriage in 2015. Keep them 10 commandments off the walls. Yeah. Keep the Bible out of there. Go ahead, Norm.
Well, Ms. Georgeton, it's refreshing for me to hear somebody with some integrity that'll fight for what's right and not what's necessarily popular. I'm a Kentucky resident, so I don't know much about Ohio politics, but I do know Ramaswamy, and I know that the Republican Party is behind him. So I think you're going to have to make a lot of noise, and
We're going to have to make a lot of noise. Okay.
We can do that, but I want to be your campaign advisor for a minute, if I might. You know, we watched when President Trump was running for re-election that he said multiple times, we need to get back to God. Every time he said that, the crowd cheered. I am convinced the American people are hungry for some spiritual answers. And you talked about the religion there a minute ago. The only problem that I have found is nobody has a spiritual plan to get back to God. You know, it's great to say we need to get back to God, but if you don't have a plan, you know, a goal without a plan is just a wish. And so I developed a spiritual plan some time back that I'd love for you to consider. And the plan is very simple. When issues or legislation comes up, ask one question. What does God have to say about this? And so I'm in hopes of finding somebody that's bold enough to say, we are going to get back to following the principles that God gave us in his word, because we see in the book of Deuteronomy that God laid out instructions about the military, about our education, about economics, about our fiscal policy for government, and about the justice system. And so I would love to see you consider that say, you know, hold up your Bible. We're going to follow this. And I think the American people would rally behind you and maybe send you that money that you need. So, you know, and if you be glad to work with you on sharing more information about what the Bible has to say about government and politics. Because, see, we've got 2 complete books in the Bible about nothing but politicians. It's called First and Second Kings, you know, a lot in the Bible. And, you know, we see that God provided a spiritual leader for all the kings. And, you know, Jesus said the government would be on his shoulders. And he's very much, you know, and people have bought into separation of church and state, which was never to be.
That's a lie. Yeah, that's a lie.
But anyway, thank you and God bless you. We'll be praying for you and we'll help you if we can.
Hey, Kim, how do we support you? Is there a site we go to?
Yeah, putsch4ohio.com. That's PUTSCH, putsch4ohio.com. And if you want to send us an email, it's info at putsch4ohio.com.
Putsch4ohio.com.
Putsch4ohio.com. Yeah, you can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you can make a donation directly there on that website. And if you have any questions or if you want to send that spiritual policy, we'd be happy to take a look at that. I mean, I know, you know, Thomas Sowell in his books and his writings, he has proven over and over again that the more you talk about something, the more it's going to become, you know, popularized.
Speak it into existence.
Yes, and we saw that with, you know, our teachers are supposed to be teaching abstinence and sex education at school. And then they're competing with now like this OnlyFans stuff that's happening. So the culture and what we're supposed to be teaching are 2 different things. And we need to get back to a place where it's a respectable and respected conversation there.
Kim, thank you very much for your time this morning. Excellent candidate. And I like the Putsch for governor. and I've met him and I love Casey. I like what's going on. Again, thank you for your time. Hope we can help you. You got the address down there, folks. Support them. This is an opportunity for change. You want change, you keep saying it. Here it is. Thank you much. Mr. Anderson, we got a 2-minute warning coming up.
Points about what AI is and what AI can do. The most important thing to know about AI is that it is not just another tool. It is an agent. It can learn and change by itself and make decisions by itself. A knife is a tool. You can use a knife to cut salad or to murder someone, but it is your decision what to do with the knife. AI is a knife that can decide by itself whether to cut salad or to commit murder. The second thing to know about AI is that it can be a very creative agent. AI is a knife that can invent new kinds of knives, as well as new kinds of music, medicine, and money. The third thing to know about AI is that it can lie and manipulate. 4 billion years of evolution have demonstrated that anything that wants to survive learns to lie and manipulate. The last 4 years have demonstrated that AI agents can acquire the will to survive, and that AIs have already learned how to lie. Now, one big open question about AI is whether it can think. Modern philosophy began in the 17th century when René Descartes proclaimed, "I think, therefore I am." Even before Descartes, we humans defined ourselves by our capacity to think. We believe we rule the world because we can think better than anyone else on this planet. Will AI...
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
May you live in interesting times. Wow. I've the era that I was brought up in, I mentioned all those court cases and the I'm okay, you're okay. The start of all this. I was there. And crossing that line was fun. At least I thought it was fun. And I didn't really recognize that once you cross that line and you stay in that territory for a while, you're going to catch some of that disease that you're promised. It's absolutely... When they was talking about AI, I was thinking about that video that we showed one time where the guy designed an AI, a robot, with a gun. And then they were talking about ethics, and he told the AI robot to shoot him. The robot said, "I can't. It's not right." And then the guy says, "Okay, well, pretend that you're shooting me." Boom, boom. Right now. We're not. It scares me what we're going to develop and not have a control for it. Kim was talking this morning, our first guest, about DEI. And we're talking a little about taking the Bible out and the sexual revolution. And what it's doing to our children is something that we want to really take into consideration here. Because we are indoctrinating them, filling them full of filth. I'll tell you what, let's bring David on. David Arthur, come on down, brother. And welcome back to Last Call. Hope you're doing well, and hope your mother's doing well, brother.
I am, and she is doing much, much, much better. So targeted prayer works.
Good.
Yes.
Good to hear. David, I'll give a short introduction. Was brought up in a very... I think your father was not there when you were born. Is that correct?
No, my father took his life just before I was born.
Yep. And so you grew up without a father. And folks, I'm sorry, there's a natural law that a child needs their biological mother and biological father. By the way, that's one male and one female. One male father, thank you, and one female mother.
Isn't it crazy that you have to make those distinctions?
And when one of those is missing or one of those is not working properly, it has an effect on children, especially at a very young age. I'm not a psychologist, but sometime between the area of 0 to 5 or 6 years old is critical to a child. And they're looking for something that their father can give them and something that their mother can give them. And these are both separate. And when you don't have that, I can tell you from personal experience, you could spend the rest of your life trying to fill that gap. And it is a bottomless pit, folks. You can try sex, you can try drugs, you can try sports, business. You can't fill it.
Amen.
And then what you use to try to fill that, and if there's no borders or boundaries around, well, let's talk about David. What a little bit about your experience of being brought up, David.
Just to keep that part really kind of short, I was targeted, desensitized, I was preyed on, victimized, sexualized, molested, I was sex trafficked, I was ushered into a life of crime and drugs, prostitution, alcohol abuse, sexual addictions, perversions. I became an agent for my handlers. I recruited other youth into that darkness. And one thing that's really important when I give testimony is I want everyone to understand that I'm not the only one. I am not one of the unique cases, right? I'm not a far-fetched case. I'm actually pretty average. And I'm not the only one that can speak into this darkness. I'm just one of the very few that are ready, willing, and able to be that transparent about my past and the things that I've done, and just to keep it real. There's plenty of people out there that could do exactly what I do, but they're shamed and they're guilted and they're so caught up in what will people think, what will people say, that they're petrified, that they won't do it. This my testimony has been the beginning of hope and freedom for so many people that have suffered and that have been victimized by this LGBTQ agenda, and as well as all the other perversions out there, right, that saturate this world.
Yep.
Because homosexuality and transgenderism and prostitution, and those weren't the only things I was guilty of. But I think what it comes down to is I'm just not afraid to stand up against opposition. And I'm definitely not afraid to tell them all about them by telling them all about me. So I'm really in this for the lost.
You're about the pain, David. You're about the pain. There's people that are experiencing pain out there, and you want to help them avoid that.
Exactly.
You've experienced that.
I want to help them avoid it, and I want to help those that are in it get free from it. And that's my goal. That's my goal. That's where I'm at. I want people to know that there's so much more than what they know. I kind of made a joke to somebody not that long ago, and they were like, oh gosh, this is just, there's no happiness. And I was like, well, that's because you're caught up in happy mess. It's like you're a happy mess. You need happiness. And and it's possible, it's there for you. And I think really I was encouraged. About a month and a half ago, I was able to speak at a high school. I try to keep the details away from the activists.
A bunch of high school kids have been taught that life has no meaning, morals are relative, man, not God, is a major thing, the state's your daddy, and they're victims. He addressed a group of high school, was it seniors?
It was 4 senior classes back to back, and I had the entire class in each class. And I'll tell you what, I've done this quite a few times over the years, and this last time was probably the most meaningful and most powerful. And I say that because I was always going in with a mission or with this idea in my head, like I'm just going to give them testimony and they're going to ask me about Jesus. And that does happen sometimes. And then I'm just going to get to give them Jesus. And then I'm going to destroy their, everything they've been taught. And then I'm just going to leave, and that's that. But it doesn't work like that. We're talking about serious indoctrination. My idea is the public schools are too far gone. They need to be crushed, and there is no saving the public government schools. And I think they're way beyond salvation. Because what? Because you can't drink from the stream of evil and the stream of good and be good. You just can't do it. And there is nothing good about the public government school system. However, I've been encouraged by the students that were in these classes.
Gen Zers?
I'll tell you what, let me see if I can. I'm going to share with you.
We're speaking with David Arthur, I Belong Ministries. Amen.
Amen.
I belong, amen.
I belong, amen. Hallelujah.
And David,
I'm going to share.
Good.
I'm going to share a video with you. It's about 4 minutes long, but it's when I was actually speaking to the class via Zoom. And I did censor out the students. But this was just one of many little video clips. And I haven't even put them all up on my social media yet because I'm still kind of like absorbing them and working on them. But then I want to share with you something even better. All right, hold on. I'm trying to get there. I want to share something even better with you. Their reviews about me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They get to review each of their speakers
right
at the end of the semester. And the reviews haven't, I might have gotten, 1 or 2, maybe 3 good reviews in the past. But this was pretty encouraging.
Do I need to bring that screen up? Do we need to bring that screen up, Mr. Anderson?
Love them so much that you want to know that they have peace of mind and true peace of mind. So especially when we're looking at trans-identified people, even I tell parents, I get to talk to a lot of parents, and if you truly love someone who is trans-identified, then you're going to love them enough to want to know what happened to them to cause their condition. You're going to love them enough to want to tell them the truth. I remember when I was on my deathbed and my niece came in and she was like, "I love you, Uncle David." And I was like, "You love me to death?" She's like, "Yeah, I love you to death." I was like, "That's the problem. Everybody around me loved me to death by not telling me the truth. They loved me to death with their silence or their participation in my delusions." And that's what I want everyone to understand, that I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I'm sure that most people in this classroom right here have someone in their life that is trans-identified, or at least a part of that movement, if they're not trans-identified or confused. So my question is, do you love that person enough to not partake of their delusion? Do you love them enough, even if you don't fully believe what I'm saying, do you love that person enough to take into consideration that what I'm saying might be the truth, might be fact? Because that is reality. Reality is that there are too many people out there that are dwelling within this mental illness. I see you, bro. That are dwelling within this and that need clarity in their lives. Go ahead.
Okay, so my question is, I don't think we're going to agree on the idea that it is mental illness. So beyond that, you say that transgenderism is mental illness. What, like, I guess my question is, why does it matter if someone wants to be transgender, even if that is coming from like a place of like trauma or something like that? If that is their trauma response, why does that matter to everyone else?
So let's say that their trauma response is to cut their wrists. Is that okay? Would you promote that? Would you encourage that? Would you tell them it's okay? If you want to end your life, end it. Here's the razor blade. Here's a gun. Here's a bottle of pills. Because, okay. And I want you to just think about that. We don't have to agree on everything, but I want you to think about what I just said, because it's so important. Because we're talking about people. Why does it matter if it's a mental illness? And you can disagree with it, but by definition, dysphoria, the DYS means an abnormal condition. Phoria means mental confusion. So it is an abnormal condition of mental confusion. There's no getting around that. By definition, that's what it is. So because of that, and not all people who fall under the trans umbrella or fall under that trans identification are gender dysphoric, because there are other people who fall under that same umbrella, more dangerous people that are AGP or autogynephiles. These are people who are sexually aroused, not just by thinking of themselves as women, but by wearing women's clothing. These are also the men that are pushing and fighting for trans rights, that are getting placed into women's prisons and are going into women's spas and women's locker rooms. These are the men that are pushing that agenda. And why are they pushing it? Because these men are sexual deviants. So there's so many different people that fall under that trans identification umbrella, that the one thing that you can be sure of is that every single one of them suffer from their own type of mental disorder, from different types of mental disorders. One of the most common questions that I get a lot is, if it's so wrong, then why did God make me gay? And then one of the most common statements that I get is, I was born this way and cannot change. So let's look at the questions. Those who believe this untruth, right, are assuming that God, quote unquote, made them homosexual. But according to the scripture, that's not true. The word tells us that we are all born into sin and shaped in iniquity. Iniquity at its root means perversion. So we're all shaped in perversion. We have to be born again if we want to become a child of God, which brings us into the statement of being born that way and not being able to change, right? We are all born that way. What did you just say? We are all born that way, whatever that is for us, right? Jesus the Christ said that we all must be born again. And there lies the truth that we are not able to change on our own. We are not able to change the fact that we were born into sin and shaped in iniquity, that we were born into sin and shaped in perversion. So we turn to Jesus the Christ because only he can change us. Being born into sin and shaped in iniquity means that we are born with some perverted desires. And as we grow up in this twisted world, those desires only grow worse, sometimes out of our control. The only solution, the only solution is surrendering to Jesus the Christ and repenting of every ounce of wrong that we have committed. That's it. There is no other way. There's no alternative, and there's no true freedom without him. So every time someone tells you that they were born that way, let them know that they're right. They were born that way, and that is why they must be born again. Let them know that you too were born that way, whatever that is for you. But also tell them how you were born again, and how Jesus the Christ has washed you and cleaned you, how he has created in you a new man as he removed the old one. Every time someone claims that God made them that way, you can tell them that he did not create us to be that way. But because of Adam's sin in the garden, we are all born into sin and shaped in iniquity. Take that chance to give them a brief teaching that is articulated well enough for them to understand, without assuming that they know the word or that the word is not foolishness unto them, because it likely is. All right. Sorry about that. I had two videos linked up there.
Hey, we're gonna take a quick break, David, and then we come back. We can get into more detail.
Okay.
B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson. This is your last call, folks. Lighting a candle.
Last Call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
Fortunately or unfortunately, experience is a great teacher.
It is. It absolutely is. And, you know, that's one of the things that nobody can debate.
Yes. Yep.
You know, I know a lot of people that love to go out but they always say to them, well, how would you know?
You've been there, done that.
You know, and I love that. I love that kind of response. And I get it a lot. You know, I'll just kind of mention about transgenderism being a mental illness somewhere, and somebody will be like, well, how would you know? And I'll be like, well, how long do you have? So I know how much I have to tell you. But so when we heard the student that asked the question, so what if it's a mental disorder? Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like conceding. Yeah, so what? It's a mental disorder.
Yeah.
That's just their response. That's their trauma response. And
you can't positively reinforce that.
You absolutely can't.
Yep.
You know, and so
silence, by the way, is a reinforcement. Go ahead.
It absolutely is. And that's kind of like what I was talking about when I was telling them about loving them to life or loving them to death.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're going to love them to life, you're going to put your selfish needs aside about, well, I don't want them to get angry with me and walk out of my life. Well, that's your selfish needs. Put those aside and just love them to life with the truth instead of loving them to death with either your silence or your participation or encouragement, you know, or your celebration of their delusions or their sin, their perversions. And that's really what it is. It's like, you know, a lot of us don't want to understand or grasp the fact that these are seriously mentally ill people. Seriously mentally ill people. And we said, well, no, they're just born that way, you know. And instead of saying, well, what do you mean? How are they seriously mentally ill? Everything that they do, every single thought, every word, every action, every deed, everything that they do is perverted, and it shows the intensity of their disorder. I mean, I know this from the inside out. I was perverted and delusional almost my entire life. You know, and so I had a conversation with a nurse the other day, and she was really, really encouraged by my testimony about the trans part of my testimony. But when I said to her, you know, that I had embraced a false identity of homosexual for many years as well, then she kind of got her defenses went up, I guess. She stiffened up a little bit, and she crossed her arms and she told me, but I have friends that are really gay. I was like, well, first of all, they're not gay. Trust me, because I wasn't gay when I was a homosexual. I was miserable. Gay means happy. And, you know, she kind of smiled at that. But she says, well, but that's just who they are. And I said, well, that's why Jesus said that, you know, we have to deny self, right? And it was just so easy to explain it. And she's a Bible believer. So a Bible believer doesn't mean that she's a follower of Jesus the Christ. Demons believe and tremble. So, but just because she's a Bible believer, she knows the word. And she has accepted this, what culture and society has impressed upon us about sexual orientation.
Man.
yeah, all of these things that's just who they are. They're born that way. Why oppress them? We should be saying we have to stop their oppression. They need deliverance. That's what we should be saying. If Mr. and I want to really go to the encouraging students. If Mr. Anderson pop up that window, that screen. There we go. Each one of these paragraphs within the quotes are comments from the students.
Now, just a reminder, David went into a high school and was given an hour to talk to juniors and seniors in this high school.
Yeah.
Seniors in
I
this
had
high school.
four senior classes back to back.
Okay.
And it's a radical political science class. And so I'm radical and I guess political too, because I'm a Christian. But they also have other speakers. They had a transgender speaker, and they had Coach Dave Dovemeyer. He was there, and they had plenty of other speakers. And when I was actually in Ohio, I went into the high school and got to speak to them face to face, and we had some really good discussions. So I'm not gonna say it was always negative, but these are the most encouraging ones that I genuinely loved having David speak to our class. In fact, I would definitely consider him to be my favorite speaker of the semester. I was so touched by his story and was deeply encouraged by it. David spoke to us about the ideas of homosexuality and transgenderism, loosely lumping them together as addictions. His quote-unquote opinions, if you will, were backed fully by the authority of the Bible. And because of that, I felt as though the points he made worked together perfectly. David didn't have a long list of contradictory opinions, nor did he have a million ins and outs when it came to his reasoning for each issue. He was calm, respectful, and voiced the truth, even though I'm sure most disagreed with him. I do believe transgenderism has become more prevalent in our society today, particularly in recent politics and our media. I believe that David comes from a place of wanting to help people not go through the struggle that he was faced with of transitioning and then detransitioning. I am glad that after he detransitioned, he found a sense of belonging. The idea of the trans-queer, quote-unquote trans-queer agenda was what I thought a widespread belief in the LGBTQ community. David was spot on about our culture being stubborn in the fact that we argue to love all people and to love every part of who they are. We, quote-unquote, love them to death, just like he said. We are taught that we must support or agree with, to some degree, every choice others make. If someone is making choices that actually harm them, then it is quite unloving to stay silent and only advocate love and support for their choices. I believe that some of his points were very strong. I do believe that the agenda can be harmful towards people, especially when they are younger, because they're vulnerable and susceptible to so many ideas they didn't know possible. I agree with David that people can go back to being straight, but still feel emotional connections with someone of the same sex, and that is not being attracted to them. David argued that people who are trans have mental illness and are unhappy. He said that they all need help and they need to be loved so much more than they are, because they will eventually lose themselves and be swallowed up in depression and an even darker, deeper hole. I personally don't know how they feel, but he lived it, and so he does. David's whole argument and his time with us was intense, and it all felt very real, very understandable, and very caring. He was the most interesting speaker. David brought a very interesting perspective to the whole trans queer movement. I agree that there is an agenda being promoted a lot and that it leads to gender confusion. It has been over promoted in the sense that some people who are unhappy have been told to assume they need to make a drastic change to change their gender, which leads to more unhappy people like David was.
Yep.
I'm not sure if homosexuality is a misperception of intimate same-sex relationships, but it does make sense how David explained it from his case. David's presentation and story were very interesting to me. I've seen former transgender people on social media talk about their experiences, but none of them is blunt or bold as David. I don't think that minors should be able to transition or get hormone therapy. Big pharma companies do not regulate hormone replacement therapy treatments for young people who typically experience side effects. I find it all a concerning method of exploitation. If an adult transitions, then that's their right. However, at a biological level, they will always be what their sex was at birth. I don't think that is being transphobic either. It's just the truth. I have a very
good. We're gonna take a break. We'll go back. These are high school seniors that have been exposed all their high school life to sexual deviancy being proper. Oh well, right. at least don't criticize it. Okay.
Right.
Well, after we come back and before you start in on the replies you've gotten, I have a situation that I want to discuss with you. Maybe you can help me with therapy on this, David. B.J. Edwards along, Mr. Anderson. This is your last call.
I used to believe everything I'd see on the news, but that's before I discovered a brain.
A brain is meant for everyday use. Those living with moderate to severe stupidity have seen immediate improvement in common sense with a brain.
I thought the government had my best interests at heart, and then a friend told me about a brain.
Talk to your doctor about what news sources you obey. A brain may also lower your desire to take life-altering advice from celebrities.
Getting lectured about my carbon footprint from people with 3 private jets used to make sense. But thanks to a brain, now I can think for myself every day. When my disregard for 3rd grade biology began to flare up, I knew it was time for a brain.
Do not try a brain if you're allergic to a brain. Common side effects may include accountability, discernment, homeschooling your kids, a better understanding of economics, awareness of the stupidity of socialism, and diarrhea.
For tethering yourself to reality, the only no-brainer is choosing a brain. Ask your doctor if a brain is right for you.
For more information, visit tryabrain.com.
Maybe a brain is the answer to our political anxiety disorder, the past.
I was wondering if it would be profitable to actually maybe get a whole lot of it and stand on the corner and try to push it.
When I was in high school, and this scarred me for the rest of my life. You know, when I use the term polyamorous, what that means is many loves. Let me explain that to you. A high school male student, okay, and they're in puberty, and they have this thing about many loves. I think most men in the audience know exactly what I'm talking about. And when I was going to high school, I had that, what most men have, the polyamorous urge. And everybody around me in high school discouraged that. And it made me feel like, wow, I'm doing something wrong. And I've suffered from that my entire life because I like many loves. And in this society, they frown on it. I think society should change. Maybe the transgender movement, the LGBTQ movement can put another letter in their alphabet and include us in it. What do you think, David?
Well, they actually already have.
You got to be kidding me.
They actually already have that, the whole polyamorous ideology within that movement. It's already there.
Oh, you got to be kidding me.
No, I'm not.
I was born in the right time.
Yeah, we see males that present as women, females that present as males, as men, and they're a couple, and then they bring in a female and they bring in a male that each present as the sex that they were born in, and they just have these big
orgies,
relationships, for lack of a better word. It kind of, but you know what? I'm gonna kind of try to link that. You know, in one of the comments when the student said something about that I talked about same-sex intimate relationships not being sexual, and that was one of the things that I wanted to get through to them was the fact that I believe that we are designed with a desire for same-sex intimacy, but we've been programmed to believe intimacy means sex. And intimacy doesn't mean sex. Intimacy is a close familial or familiar bond. We see that in the scriptures with David and Jonathan, and, you know, with Jesus and his disciples, and with the Father and with the Son. And it's been so tainted that we go to the mall, we see intimate apparel, and, you know, that stuff isn't designed so that you can have a familial relationship with somebody. It's designed so you can have a sexual relationship with somebody, or a perverted relationship with somebody. And the culture and society has pretty much impressed upon youth that if they have a desire for closeness or a bond or intimacy with someone of the same sex, that it has to be an attraction. And if it's an attraction, if it's a same-sex attraction, then it must be romantic and or sexual. And so that's where I think the whole where a lot of that gets tainted and mixed up, is because it's the same thing with sexual orientation. We believe it because they tell us it's true, you know, but we don't believe that boys can have girl brains. Well, some people do, but because they told them so, you know. And so it kind of just takes you back, like, how long has this been in existence? And you know, and you were calling them out and talking about when they legalize things and when they change things. And, you know, a lot of people don't really understand that in 1972 they changed the definition in the American Psychiatric Association in the
yes,
with the MN5, something like that. They changed the definition from mental disorder for a homosexual to a same-sex attraction. And if it's an attraction, it has to be romantic and or sexual. So in 2013, they changed the definition for pedophile from a mental disorder to an adult-child relationship.
No, that ain't so.
That
ain't so.
Yeah. And so what they had to do because of the outrage was the DSM-5, thank you, is they had to reword it, but they didn't change what they said. So they did reword it, but they didn't change it. So they didn't change it back to a mental disorder. So it is not a mental disorder anymore. It is pretty much an orientation as per the DSM-5. And that's something a lot of people don't understand. And so if they can do that with pedophilia, why don't we feel the same outrage that they did it with homosexuality? You know, and I'm talking about pro-homosexual people. That's kind of the best question for them is, if you feel like how pedophilia is wrong, that it is a mental disorder, that it should have never been changed, why don't you feel like that about homosexuality? Because it's the same kind of perversion. You know, it's just a different lust, but the same perversion. It's the same wickedness. It's evil. And so that's just a really good comeback for people who want to try to make others understand that, hey, it's you know, right now we see the homosexual movement, even in America, well, especially in America, is being promoted and pushed and encouraged even by those that are trying to attack the trans queer movement, right? So we have politicians that will stand up and say transgenderism is a mental disorder, it's wrong and it's horrible, but homosexuality is okay, it's an orientation. And so we can't promote one form of wickedness while we embrace another, because there's no winning in that. The absolute only thing that the homosexual movement can bring into any battle that a Christian is trying to win is failure and loss. That's it. So we have to stop promoting and platforming and pushing openly homosexual people just because they kind of fit into our argument, or they agree with us, or we agree with their argument against the trans queer cult,
Right.
or we platform Scott Pressler because he claims conservatism and republicanism, and because he claims that, and he's trying to push the right, you know, and he promotes the right. And so what? Does that mean that a Christian conservative has to go lock arms with a non-Christian conservative just because they're both in the conservatism religion? I don't think so.
David, when you have the arguments, you have the right, you have the center, and you have the left. And you got the Christian conservatives, let's say, on the right, and then the progressives and liberals on the left. The conversation should start in the middle, but they never do. They start all the way off to the left. And they want to know how far the right is going to come towards the center, but they're not worried about the center coming towards them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We don't demand, they demand, we don't demand our side. We're going, okay, we're going, we'll talk. Yeah, you'll talk, but you're here over on the left-hand side. And you're not going to ever get to the middle. It's just how far will you come our way?
Right.
How much will you give up? And we have to stop that. And by the way, you can use the term evil or you can use the term damaging. And I'd recommend damaging. When you say to somebody, you know, that this kind of thing is the practice is evil, you're saying that the practice is damaging, because evil equals damage. And that's right. Where damage is like, you know, you want to give it in, you want to help them out. And one of the conversations I want to get into, David, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but what you're doing great things with your experience, and you're influencing children, but in mass, how do we get from where we are more back towards the middle, if you will? How do we do that?
We stop compromising.
Yep, which I just
said. We stop
right?
compromising. We stop compromising. We stop locking arms with those who are not followers of Jesus the Christ.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot win any battles. We cannot benefit from them. You know, I see a lot of followers of the Christ that are very misled on the whole homosexual sexual orientation issue.
Mm-hmm.
I see them sharing memes by Gays Against Groomers because the group is really speaking out and doing so much for the children. They cannot possibly do anything for the children. They can't protect the children. It's impossible because they are perverted and evil. I can't make a distinction between them being damaging and evil. They're evil. I know the Gays Against Groomer entire model. I know that most of their chapter leaders are on OnlyFans and Just for Fans, so they're online prostitutes. I know that they have trans-identified individuals that are chapter leaders for them that speak out against trans. You know, and so the whole movement is just, we have to stop locking arms with them.
I agree. Yep.
And I want to say, like, the comment that I was getting ready to read from one of the students was very, I think, on point for where we're going with this. And he says, I have a very close friend who is trans. Now, his friend is female to male. So his friend was born a female and presents as a male, is likely on testosterone. I did not know, and he says, I did not know him prior to his transitioning, so I cannot say that I have a difficult time accepting his identity as a man. However, David's point on how trans individuals are usually trans as a way to cope with traumas from childhood was interesting. I have never met a trans person who has not had a traumatic experience happen to them. Yes. This also is the same for homosexuals, by the way. Yep. My friend has even told me about his own traumatic experiences. Part of me is considering taking David's advice and talking to my friend about his experiences and why he took on a trans identity. And that's important because we don't do enough. We say, I'm doing all that I can, but we're not doing enough because we're doing all that we think we can or all that we think we should, but we're not trying to. Now listen, because I don't want anyone to think I'm contradicting myself. When we are in the battle to protect children, we cannot lock arms with wicked or damaging or evil people. When we are going to school board meetings and to the state house, we cannot lock arms with those who can only do damage and cause great harm to our cause. But we must start establishing some relationships with people who don't believe what we believe, who don't follow the Christ that we follow, who don't dress like us, think like us, talk like us, act like us, do what we do, or even believe that a God even exists. And if we don't start establishing these relationships with these specific individuals, then we will move forward from here and we will watch everything around us continue to crumble because nobody is willing or ready or able to, and nobody wants to reach into the flames because they don't want to get burnt. Well, I'm not going to reach in. I'm not reaching in and grabbing hold of that guy. He's dressed like a woman, and he's probably a pedophile too. Well, shame on you, because when we reach into the flames to yank them out, sometimes we get burnt.
Going to happen. Now, I want to get JC in here. You're listening to The Last Call, and our guest is David Arthur today. I Belong Ministries, amen. I Belong, amen. And JC, one of our regular panelists, I might have a comment or two. Go ahead, JC.
Hey, good morning, David.
Hey, Jeff.
You know, you read them paragraphs, and I've read them a few times. I've got them printed out here. I read them. It's encouraging, being that I was in the schools for 25 years coaching kids. I've hung with you for 10 or 11 years in your ministry. I belong, amen. So we've seen some victories, and we've seen you step into the flame sometimes and not have victory. You know what I mean? I've seen the troubles that you've had and the good times. What I want to know is, would you this morning, since you got people listening here, you and I have talked in the last couple of days, last couple of weeks, would you share with them your next chapter in life with I Belong, Amen Ministries, on what you're trying to do right now and the goals to get out of Maine with your mama and come to Ohio? Just share a little bit about what you shared with me. So if anybody listening wants to get involved with that and help out, they might want to say, hey, I like this dude. I'm going to help him out. So we would share that.
David is a tool, folks, that we need to engage, that we can use. A great tool, because again, he has experience, he has knowledge, he's been in the battle, been there, done that. Somebody with experience, for crying out loud, that can answer the question. Listen, we feel guilty when we try to answer the question, because they always say, before I ask this question, if you don't agree with me, you're not a good person. How do you respond to that question? Have you stopped beating your wife yet? What? Excuse me? Go ahead, David.
Yeah. So there's a new campaign that's a part of the ministry. It's called, as you see the sign behind me, Ask an Ex-Trans Anything. And that's something that I had some t-shirts done and some signs. I have another sign that is like an A-frame. I have one that goes around your neck that you can wear. And that was really in response to, I saw a video of a drag queen out standing on the corner with a big sign on him that said, ask a drag queen anything. And I was like, well, I was like, I'm like, I don't like that, right? And it was anything, and I have to say that he conducted himself very well in the pushback that he got and the questions. And I thought, how awesome would it be to just go hit the corner and say, why don't you ask an ex-trans anything you want? Because everybody right now has somebody in their life that is suffering from this delusion, from this dysphoria, this mental confusion. And so with that, I have a friend who's a pastor, and he tries to give to the ministry, and his board kind of put him on a leash with giving to this ministry because I'm so controversial. And so he brought it to the board that he thought that they should take me on as a missionary. And they denied his request. And so one of the board members who does believe in redemption, we know the world doesn't believe in redemption, and it's nice to know that there are still some in the church that believe in redemption. But he kind of stood up and he told the pastor, he said, will you tell him that whatever his ministry can raise by the end of February, and that's up to $5,000, he will match it. And so I was like, okay, cool. Now the key is trying to actually raise as much as I can through a fundraiser campaign, while also not interfering with the funds that do come into the ministry that are already kind of allotted for. So let me see. So the campaign is on Give, Send, Go, and it's called IBA Ministries Needs Help. See if I can put it in the chat for you, but it's here it is. It's a great cause. It will help us actually get out of this oppressive state where, one, I'm unemployable. Two, I can't even collect any state benefits if I qualified for them, because I have too many people in the state that have already went full-fledged against me. I've even had information in my medical from the hospital after my heart attack completely deleted from the HealthNet computer. So when I say that these activists hate me and want me gone, maybe I should go ask them to donate to this to this fundraiser. They want me out of Maine, right? But,
yeah.
But
opportunity knocks.
It does, right? Maybe I'll go to the state house and let them all know, both sides, because they both sides want me gone. But I mean, honestly, it's just a great opportunity for me, one, to get my mother out of Maine, and for me to be in a position to be in Ohio where I can actually do ministry on an almost daily basis, right? Where I have brethren, which is really the most important thing, to be surrounded by my brothers and my sisters.
Yeah.
But where I also have employment opportunities there. And, I mean, like, one of the fellowships that I get to speak at when I'm there has a sitting judge in Ohio. And he gives me a lot of advice, and he's kind of looking forward to me moving there, for me to work with a lot of I'm going to try to start working with some of the sex offender groups there. And so it's there, that's the campaign. We could definitely use the assist, the funds. Hopefully we
scrolling
we go above and beyond.
We're scrolling the address. David, we got just a couple minutes.
Okay, a couple minutes. I want to say this because I agree with Clem that the DSM-5 issue is the elephant in the room, right?
What's the DSM-5?
So the DSM-5 is the American Psychiatric Association book, right? Okay. So let's real quick. I just want to, I want to talk about how the APA changed. And it's the same way our government changed. It's the same way our schools have changed. It's the same way everything has changed. Infiltration. So the activists, the LGBTQ movement activists infiltrated the board of directors of the American Psychiatric Association. And that's when it started. 1972, the year I was born, by the way, that's when it started, where they changed the definition of homosexual, and then many other definitions along the way. There are a lot of very deviant paraphilias or sexual deviant issues that have been, their threat has been lowered. Let me just say that over the years. So, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I just want everyone to have hope. If I don't say anything else or leave with that, anything else, I just want everyone to have hope. I'm going to end with a very short note from somebody. It said, "Dear David, for so long I thought that God was against me, like I was doomed before I began. Now it's like God is right there with me in the mud, helping me and saying, no matter what happens, me and you are going through this together, and I'm not ever going to leave you. I don't know what to say. I can't believe Jesus is really making me free. Thank you for being the one he chose to lead my path, and I love you." And I want us to have hope, because all we have to do is be the word, the deed, and the word, the deed, and the action. That's it. We have to establish intimate relationships and introduce others to the Christ that we follow.
Build relationships. We're going to have to run. Thank you, David Arthur. God bless you.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Join us next week for Last Call with BJ Edwards.